First, let's jump straight in with an update on the Queen, who of course has pulled out of attending the UN's climate change conference, which begins this weekend. Well, let's get more on this with the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English. Rebecca, thank you for being with us. This news, it's fair to say, it's caused a fair bit of public concern.
It did. Hi, Jess. It has caused a great deal of concern because, of course, it comes only a week after the Queen cancelled a trip to Northern Ireland at the 11th hour. Now, the Queen has amazing energy for a woman of her age, but she still is 95. So with very little explanation from the palace about what's happening, there is public concern about this.
And last week it was revealed that the Queen was admitted to hospital, but the palace are keeping quite tight-lipped about this. They've still not really said what that was all about.
They haven't, and this is part of the problem, Jess. So when the Queen cancelled this visit and we were told she was not going, royal correspondents and myself were briefed that she would be resting at Windsor. And it turns out, actually, only hours later, she was taken to hospital for what they describe as preliminary investigations and kept in overnight. And unfortunately, the palace only decided to confirm this when word started to leak out. So obviously it hasn't helped to the kind of public mood that is there something going on behind the scenes. I'm constantly reassured she's fine, she's in good spirits, and it really is just a question of her resting and taking things a little bit easier. But of course there is always that little bit of concern in the back of people's minds, isn't there?
Absolutely. And she will still be taking part in COP26, albeit at a distance. But of course, we will have other senior royals in Glasgow representing her.
Yes, and this is something Buckingham Palace were very keen to get across, that the Queen made this decision very regretfully, and she's recording a video message at Windsor Castle at the end of this week to be played to delegates at the opening of COP. And she's made very clear that she wants the summit to be a success and that a meaningful action will come out of it. And of course, they are still rolling out the royal big guns. We've got the new Fab Four, so to speak. We've got Charles, Camilla, we've got William and Kate, all out there to charm delegates to represent Britain PLC. And of course, Charles and William have pretty strong eco-credentials of their own, so they're definitely the right men for the job.
Andrew, let's start by sort of going back to the Queen. I mean, she's been doing her audiences over Zoom. We've heard she's even giving up her nightly tipple. I mean, should we be concerned?
You have to be concerned because she's 95, and the fact that Palace were at best dissembling, at worst fibbing about the true nature of what was going on last week makes you even more concerned. She looked great in the photographs they released, but she really did want to be at COP26. The Prime Minister wanted her there because she's stardust. She would be the star turn. Angela Merkel, I can tell you, in her last year as German Chancellor, when she left the G7 summit in Cornwall earlier this year, she wasn't talking endlessly about the boring communiques they issued or the Cornish scenery. She talked about finally she got to meet the Queen. And she was blown away by her, because that's what she's great at. She's a fantastic ambassador for Britain. So it's a big blow for the Prime Minister, big blow for COP26, but they've made the right decision. 30,000 people will be going into Glasgow for this conference, which won't achieve very much, let's be honest, I don't suppose. And that is a petri dish, potentially, for COVID. I mean, if you're 95, you're vulnerable. You should be shielded from that.
Tessa, she is a star, but she is 95. You've been writing this week about, do we need to think about what's next? But some people say, is it bad taste to start talking already about her legacy and her reign?
I think we need to proceed with caution. I work almost exclusively with women of the Queen's age, her stage, who also are dutiful. Often we pre-plan and do events together, and I always make sure I book 3, because normally only 2 on the night will be able to make it. It's hardcore being 95 and older. Being old, the expression is, ain't for the faint-hearted. And I think we're all aware, as is the Queen, of just how valuable an asset she is. And therefore, she needs to take on advice and rein in accordingly. What I don't think she would want to happen, and I think where we're in danger of going down this line, is every time she pulls back, gives in to her age. It's poured over in minute detail, because I think this could be the next 5 years, and that's not the narrative she's going to want. So I think the less we do scrambling around, is that a fib, isn't it, is she ill, isn't she? No, steady on, just let's hold fire and let her go at her own pace.
Yeah, but I agree with that to a point, but they're the mistresses or masters of their own misfortune here, because, as Rebecca English made quite clear, people were briefed that she was resting at home at Windsor Castle, when in fact a few hours later she was in hospital. They weren't going to tell us that. Overnight in hospital, first time for years, for preliminary tests, which implies there are going to be more tests. So what's the issue?
Perhaps and if they didn't want panic.
Yeah, but you can't. If they told the truth, it's always best to be truthful.
But 1 second, her medical welfare is her own private concern. What they choose to release is therefore at their own discretion, and things can move very quickly. So we don't know. 1 minute she probably was resting in her palace, and the next minute she did have to go to hospital.
But by being vague is not even the right word. They just weren't straight and upfront about it. That then fuels the speculation there must be something terribly wrong which they're trying to hide away. And she is the world's most famous woman. She is the head of state. She has all sorts of responsibilities, and they should have been a bit more open and honest about it.
And I think we need to be more realistic about how challenging it is to be 95 and how quickly things can change. David Attenborough, almost her twin, on Radio 4 a couple of days ago, the journalist says, "What are you doing next?" He's like, "I don't know. I don't plan ahead."
Quite.
And arguably neither should the Queen.
I mean, she's obviously always going to have scrutiny because of who she is, but, you know, as you say, debatable about how much we should know about that. Let's talk a bit about Charles and William. Been very vocal about climate change. They will be heading to COP26. Do you think they're actually going to have any influence, or is it more about the sort of symbolism that they are there together representing the royals?
Look, we all know what Charles thinks about the environment. He's been banging on about it for the last 35, 40 years, hasn't he?
Don't curl your lip, Andrew.
To the point where it becomes almost boring. What is more significant, I think, is what William says. He's the new generation. He's the new kid on the block. He will be king one day. He speaks for a younger generation who are arguably far more concerned about the environment. And he is beginning to have sound a little bit of an echo chamber of his father. But I think so far, I don't think he's gone over the line in a way that Prince Charles has, in my view, on many occasions, and which you can't do when you're king. But I think William and Kate are the rock stars at that conference in Glasgow. I'm afraid not Fred and Gladys, Charles and Camilla. I'm afraid it's William and Kate. That's where the cameras will be, and that's who everybody will want to be with.
Yes, Tessa, do you think he's towing the political line with his green campaigning?
I think the reason why the royals have wholeheartedly backed green isn't just because of Charles's lifelong obsession. It's also because it's on one level no longer political. We are heating up, and not just in this studio. The problem, I think, and where William's got to really walk a canny line, is how we deal with climate change is hugely political. So in a way, the Queen being there, because she never really says anything, she just nods, you know, oh yeah, the climate's heating up. Perfect. That's what you want. You know, the institution of monarchy is recognising that. William is just one step away from telling us what to do. At the moment, he's just giving out prizes, and he needs to make sure it remains that side of the line, because otherwise it's a quagmire. And people who go green isn't political. There's a Green Party, for goodness sake. It is political.
And also, families will face huge increases in their bills if we're going to comply with the government's timetable to cut carbon emissions. Huge impact on their income. And if William has then thrown himself full square into that agenda, he's not. It could be argued he's not on the side of poorer working class families who are going to struggle to pay these bills. We're going to have to all get rid of our gas boiler, and the alternative is about £12,500. That's a lot of money.
It is, but imagine how much money it is if you've got several palaces.
Exactly.
Well, I don't think we've ever talked about gas boilers on Palace Confidential before, so thank you both for that.